Hey everybody, Josh, the media here, and many of you have heard about one of the record largest earthquakes to ever hit in modern history. Just recently, we've seen a lot of seismic activity recently as well. On top of what we're seeing in Russia, we've also seen massive earthquakes recently in Alaska, as well as around Thailand and India, as well as around many parts, even in Europe. There is something happening here, and I kind of want to go into what this actually means because I'm not entirely sure that this is totally natural. Now, of course, earthquakes do happen naturally, but we are seeing some strange reactions here. We have whistleblowers coming out, and of course, we have warnings from Russia. This is out of your news. It says Klyuchevskoy volcano erupts after massive earthquake. Now, we're seeing volcanoes, earthquakes, fires, floods, hurricanes, strange events in Texas and North Carolina, in Maui, and of course, the Pacific Palisades. We're seeing hurricanes directed directly at cities and places in Mexico and elsewhere. Something weird is happening. And I'm going to go into it today as we cover this recent news of these massive tsunami waves hitting the Pacific coast of Latin America right now, where I am in Puerto Vallarta. They are hitting, but of course, it's more about the riptides that are the largest, concern for people right now, more than any giant waves. Japan isn't as lucky. Japan and Hawaii are seeing massive tidal waves, and parts of Russia are seeing as much as 2 or 3 meter high waves. Tsunami hits Hawaii after earthquake off Russia's eastern coast. Now, it's interesting with all this, what Russia themselves have been saying for quite some time. This is an article from 2023. Russian war report, pro-Kremlin surrogates accuse the U.S. of using climate weapons in Crimea. And it's also interesting to consider, the whistleblowers that have come out, including an ex-Raytheon whistleblower regarding what they have in bases in Alaska, which affects earthquakes around the world. We'll go into that and more today, my friends. Before we do, I urge you to check those links below and get prepared for one of these weather events or the attack on farmers or the overall push for technocracy. It's important to be prepared. I urge people to check out whambeef.com for 10 plus year shelf life freeze-dried steak, 12 servings per bag. Of course, there's freeze-dried chicken and ground beef as well. Use code WHAMBEEF, WAMBEEF, all one word, and you will get 20% off on your order. So I highly recommend people get on this today so they aren't stuck eating food rations down the road, because that's one of the main ways they want to control humanity, is to force us into a situation where we are dependent on rations under digital IDs, etc. I urge people to check out heavensharvest.com for long-term storable food as well. There's non-GMO kits, there's heirloom seeds, there's organic kits, by the way, which is hard to find. You're not going to find that at your local Home Depot. Freeze-dried food, water filtration and storage, books on how to get started. Use code WHAM, W-A-M, and you will get 5% off, as well as free shipping on these items in the United States. So stock up now. Stop waiting until, something happens. It's going to happen, and it's going to be too late for you to do anything about it. So I urge people to stock up today. Now, let's get into this. Hit that like button, share on social media, et cetera, as always. Your news says Klyuchevskoy volcano erupts after massive earthquake. And we've seen a lot of massive volcanoes going off recently, but this is after an 8.8 magnitude earthquake hit off the coast of Russia, the largest I think it was the sixth largest in modern history, the sixth largest ever recorded anyway. And tsunami waves are beginning to hit the Pacific coast of Latin America. We've also seen tsunami waves starting to hit California, the coast of California, up all the way to Washington. The tsunami advisory had been lifted for coastal areas between the California-Mexico border and Rincon Point. It says here, officials on the west coast of the United States and Central and South America are on high alert amidst earthquake-borne tsunamis around the Pacific. The National Weather Service office for the San Francisco Bay Area said on X that a tsunami advisory would remain in effect for the time being due to continued wave fluctuations, but authorities in Central and South America are on high alert. At the same time, tsunami has hit Hawaii after earthquake off of Russia's eastern coast. It says, of course, we have heard the news of Oprah blocking off her private road in Maui, stopping people from getting to shelter in the face of these tsunamis, making them have to drive an hour and a half instead of about 30 minutes because she didn't want people going down her private road. So again, really the testament to the character of these so-called celebrities. They're so celebrated, in the future, they're going to be the first to be shunned. Of course, This is part of the normalization we see of all these weather disasters across the world. They're going to claim climate change. They're going to claim we need to bring in, carbon credits. They're going to claim we need digital IDs for this stuff. They're going to claim that we are that we hate our neighbor and that we hate everyone if we don't submit to the technocratic approach to completely enslave ourselves to a digital ID, food rations, and all these things, because they say if we do not do that, we are going to hurt our neighbors. Of course, that's nonsense. If anything, they are hoarding foods across the board in government facilities, as we saw in 2020, as we saw, of course, in Puerto Rico years ago after a massive hurricane. And they are purposely destroying the grid across the board, which we've done a lot of videos on as well. Now, as far as these earthquakes go, people will say, okay, well, Josh, earthquakes happen all the time. Why would you even consider the possibility that this is unnatural in any way, shape, or form? Well, of course, we have whistleblowers that have talked about that before. And I'm not saying anything myself. I'm quoting Russia themselves, claiming that the United States is heavily involved in these practices. Russian war report, pro-Kremlin surrogates accuse the U.S. of using climate weapons in Crimea. And this is from the Atlantic Council, very evil, nefarious organization. But nonetheless, even the establishment is openly saying this is something that Russia is accusing the U.S. of. This isn't some conspiracy website. This isn't something crazy. On November 27, sources on Telegram reported a massive explosion with subsequent detonations in eastern Ukraine's occupied Donetsk region. It's likely that drones and the armed forces of Ukraine attacked a Russian munitions storage facility. They're talking about all this back in 2023, leading to them saying that Russia is now claiming that they are using, that the United States government is using weather weapons in Ukraine and in Crimea to directly attack Russia. It's not the first time they've talked about this. Russians, this is from 2010, by the way, July 30th, 2010, exactly 15 years to the day. Russian scholar warns of secret U.S. climate change weapon. He claims that they will use this to cause fires, droughts, erase crops, and of course, induce various anomalous phenomena in certain countries. This is an article by Andrei Areshev, Deputy Director of the Strategic Culture Foundation. And of course, this is something that, again, sounds like it's something out of just some crazy conspiracy theorist magazine, though, of course, we already know that they can use weather weapons. We've talked about that I've been talking about that for about 19 years, on Wham, almost 15 years. The idea that you can cloud seed. Of course, they're doing that in places like Dubai, where we saw massive floods. There's been some strange happenings and findings around the testing sites for cloud seeding in Texas, around Kerr County, before these massive floods, and also in New Mexico before these floods, and also in North Carolina, and of course the utilization by the military for years on directing hurricanes, which has been well documented. There's nothing conspiratorial about this, or nothing in theory about this. This is what they say they do, and they have a lot of documents on this, okay? And we also know that they can direct fires and direct winds to stoke fires. And of course, earthquakes. We've talked about this before with HARP, the facility in Alaska, which has documented what they say are northern lights at the equator, which is impossible, by the way. And after those northern lights, we see massive earthquakes like we saw around Haiti years and years ago. So I believe that they have been testing this for a long time. I believe that they want to normalize these weather events in order to force us into this new climate agenda, which, by the way, with the United Nations Pact for the Future, signed by 193 countries back in September of 2024, the overall agenda is that they could shut down your bank if you question this stuff. They could shut down your bank if you question the government. They can force you into carbon credit systems with food rations. And of course, with Professor Suzanne Michie, who was heavily involved in the Corona narrative back in 2020, she's involved with the British government in putting in carbon credit scores on your bank without, of course, you being aware of this. So this stuff is already happening at a large scale, and the overall goal is technocracy, and the goal of technocracy is to abandon the basis of humanity, which is individualism. On natural disasters, the next front in Russia's hybrid war. Now, we have on the other side them saying that Russia is going to use weather weapons against Europe, to sabotage Europe, and that they'll deploy solar geoengineering technologies, stoking disorder by destabilizing the region's climate. This is Rusi.org. This is mainstream, basically. again, this isn't just something off of, these crazy conspiracy theory websites, though I'm prone to believe most of what they say any day before the mainstream. But nonetheless, it is something that has been acknowledged and for years. Now, we heard about 2 years ago, I heard about this ex-Raytheon whistleblower. His name is Eric Hecker, who has gone on a Patrick Bet-David's show and talked about how he worked in Antarctica. I'll read what they say in this little blurb from the interview from a few years ago, because it's hard to find articles on him, but you can find a lot of his interviews and his transcripts. So Patrick Bet-David interviews ex-Raytheon whistleblower Eric Hecker, who gives the inside scoop on Antarctica. Hecker is a former member of the Navy who worked for Raytheon, a major U.S. defense contractor. His position as a firefighter and plumber for the South Pole facility in Antarctica gave him unrestricted access to the compound. During his stay, Hecker observed highly advanced directed energy weapons and other technologies beyond what we previously thought possible. He also testified to Congress under oath and hopes to bring his experience to the public for the good of humanity. He claimed, among others who have also come out of Antarctica who worked there, that earthquakes were actually caused by these weather weapons and these energy weapons, and that they caused the earthquakes in New Zealand, for example. And these aren't the only people that have made these claims. And of course, a lot of people have pointed to the unnatural effects leading up to these earthquakes. Again, I'm not going to say one way or another. I know they can. So I say, why wouldn't they? But we know that, again, they see northern lights in the sky before this happens. A big example of, direct energy weapons and, of course, the utilization of electromagnetic spectrum in order to create clouds, to create storms, to create a massive event. Again, in the case of this, there's weapons that we can't even imagine how they work. So, I mean, when we see all these weird anomalies like northern lights in the South Pole or around the equator, and then within 15 minutes, you have a massive earthquake. I don't know how the technology works. I know it's there. I know there's something happening. And I know that we should be questioning it more and not be afraid of looking crazy when we question it, because clearly something is going on here. And the reason I wanted to put these things together is, okay, you have this whistleblower. You have, of course, the United States and Europe claiming that Russia is going to use weather events against them. You have Russia saying for decades now that the U.S. has been trying to use weather weapons against them. And in fact, claimed that they did indeed in Crimea. And I think it was recently a government official in Russia claimed that a bunch of the storms in North Carolina were caused by the government. Meanwhile, we have these massive weather events that are happening, it seems, every week, and they'll claim climate change. Yeah, climate change revolving around earthquakes. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so someone drove an SUV, so now there's earthquakes. And people say that makes sense, but then utilizing weapons deep in the crust of the earth is a crazy idea that would never happen and is far-fetched. It's like, what is more far-fetched, that the weather changes, or first of all, the earth is getting colder, but the weather changes, say, by 0.00001% hotter, and now there's massive earthquakes everywhere. I mean, give me a break. It's such complete nonsense. I think they're normalizing this. I think they want the fear around this, and I think they're going to utilize the fear to bring in the climate agenda. TWZ says, questions swirl around status of Russian nuclear submarine base after historic earthquake. This also seems to be another target here, warfare in general, and the future of warfare utilizing AI, which has been signed onto by Trump and Biden before that, and this massive push to change all the weaponry worldwide into robotics, and of course use AI to determine who gets to live, who gets to die. And also they have, with the big beautiful bill, the takeover of all nuclear facilities and nuclear weapons manufacturers with AI. And then at the same time, we have this war going on, and they could use weather as a massive weapon combined with AI, while the rest of us are just helpless and unprepared. So now, in the face of warfare with these earthquakes, we see the threat to these Russian nuclear submarine bases. And imagine the catastrophe that could happen if one of these nuclear subs goes off and leaks into the Pacific. Not that far, by the way, from Alaska, not that far, by the way, from Vancouver, Canada, or Washington State, including places like Seattle and Portland, and of course, eventually all the way down to Los Angeles. Again, this is a real risk, and they'll say it's an accident and it's a event that was caused by weather and blah, 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 blah. I believe that this is very likely to be a setup to, one, normalize, two, create an excuse, problem, reaction, solution, repeat, to bring in further restrictions on humanity, which is always the entire purpose of what they do. This epicenter of this earthquake was very close to a lot of towns on the east coast of Russia. And we've seen insane videos and now these massive waves hitting towns in Russia. And these waves are absolutely massive. We see crazy videos of sea lions fleeing the tsunamis. So I'm going to bring this up here off of X. We see videos of, look at these. I mean, this is crazy. This is from RT. It looks like hundreds, if not 1,000 sea lions all diving to try and get away from the tsunami that's incoming. And of course, animals are very much affected by these events. We've seen that in Yellowstone. They try to scare us every few years about the bison running in Yellowstone. What do they know? What do they know? Well, they feel the trembling in the ground. They're super sensitive to those things, and they take off. And we've seen those videos for decades and decades, and they always try to claim it's about to happen. It's about to happen. Well, I think that there's a good chance that they will be determining what is going to happen overall, when it's going to happen, and what that means going forward. As I wrote on Exit at World Alt Media, the earthquake leading to the tsunami has now been upgraded to an 8.8 magnitude, which is absolutely crazy, as we see the tsunami sirens blasting in places like Yokohama, Japan. And I also pointed out that there has been a lot of strange seismic activity lately. We have seen like a record number of these seismic events as of recently. I live in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, which is close to one of the biggest fault lines in the world. And I've experienced massive earthquakes here before, but nothing like that. Nothing like that. I mean, I'm always on edge about it, because when are they going to set off the weapon, or is it going to be natural? Who knows? We all know the end goal is the same, though, right? I mean, the end goal is chaos, and with weather, it's a great way to get people riled up and in fear, and then they come in with the solutions. What are those solutions? Well, in order for national security reasons, which they also utilize for war and all these other things, and pandemics, etc. For national security reasons, you have to listen to us, do as we say, is shelter in place. Here's some food we can give you. Here's some battery packs we can give you, and just depend on us completely. And if you step out of line, well, we have martial law, so you can't do that. And if you do that, we'll be locking you up, and you won't even get your Soylent Green. You'll get something even worse. And I'm very concerned about where this is going, because people have become so desensitized, so dependent on the system, on grocery stores, on banks, on the grid, that in the face of these events, and not to mention the collapse of the supply chain worldwide, where we're seeing record shortages across the board and people just don't want to acknowledge it, I think that this is a prime time for them to come in with massive emergency orders. And of course, with those emergency orders, everyone is restricted to a system of so-called convenience. Tyranny comes under the guise of convenience, and then you are dependent on whatever disgusting poison food that they give you based on your credit score. And then they come in with a new replacement system, because people say, well, why would they bring down the grid? Why would they bring down the internet? Why would they do all this stuff when the future is technocracy and the Internet of Things? Because they need to replace a system. They need a pretext to that. So they will destroy the system and come in with their conveniently already created new system of technocratic governance, where they say, look, we already have this ready. We are so smart. We care about you so much. We want to protect you. And of course, they're the ones that created the problem in the first place. So this all comes down to the basis of self-responsibility. If you are not independent, if you have no control over your own life, if you are completely dependent on grocery stores, if you're completely dependent on your bank, if you're completely dependent on the grid and the water, which I would say 99.9% of people are, and I mean, I'm dependent in many ways myself, and I hope that people, though I'm in Mexico, so it's a bit different, but I hope that people out there understand that this is how they use your weaknesses against you. And yes, it's not your fault that necessarily initially that you've been weakened to this, because we've all grown up in that system of convenience. And it's time that we all get prepared for what's to come next. So in the face of these weather events, I believe we're going to be seeing a lot more of this. I believe that they're going to be fear mongering a lot about this, utilizing their own powers to cause these events to happen, and then coming in as the so-called solution so that everyone gets on their knees. I think it's time for people to honestly think of stocking up for a long period of time, so that in the face of the Great Reset, this is what it's all about with the technocratic agenda, the Great Reset, complete dependence on that system. As Yuval Noah Harari said, he dreams of a world where people are placated on drugs, playing video games. They own nothing and they're happy, as Klaus Schwab says. This is where they're heading. And with this AI governance system and these weather events and war and pandemics, and of course, all these other things that they're creating, the civil unrest they're stoking, and the destruction of farms and the climate agenda, combine all these things together, it's incredibly important you get prepared. So I urge people to go and check out heavensharvest.com. Again, for long-term storable foods that are non-GMO, there's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, books on how to get started. Use code WAM, W-A-M, and you will get 5% off as well as free shipping on these items. So again, if you want to keep yourself and your family safe, I urge people to get that. If you have one bucket, get three. I mean, one bucket, unfortunately, is not enough to keep us for the potentially a couple months on end, which is a period of time that it takes to get everyone dependent. Look at 2020. And of course, also, if you have family members or friends that think you're crazy, get one for them too. Give it to them for Christmas. They'll laugh at you. They won't be laughing later. I also urge people to check out whambeef.com for 10 plus year shelf life freeze-dried steak, 12 servings per bag. Of course, there's freeze-dried chicken and ground beef as well. Stock up on this. Why not? Again, this is a great deal versus inflation in the future. You're saving. And of course, you're also putting yourself in a position where you don't depend on that system later. Again, it's a no-brainer. Guaranteed no mRNA, no lab-grown meat, all American beef that's 100% natural. Go to whambeef.com and use code WHAMBEEF, all one word. Again, there's many different things that you guys can do. I urge people to check out Wild Pastures. Again, if you use our link, you'll get 20% off your life plus $15 off your first box. You'll help save the farmers while giving yourself a really good system here. 100% grass-fed and finished beef, pasteurized pork, pasteurized chicken, and wild-caught seafood. No mRNA, no GMOs, hormones, antibiotics, steroids, feedlots, pesticides, or chemicals of any kind, all raised on regenerative family farms in 48 U.S. states, delivered to your door, temperature controlled and customizable as you see fit. Again, use our link and you save money. You save the farmers, your local farmers, and of course, for at least a period of time in the face of all this. And you, of course, get good meat that isn't, the stuff that you're finding that's tainted on the local grocery store shelves. Very important going forward, my friends. And of course, health is important. And I'm going to throw this out there, vni.life/WAM, W-A-M. Check that out because we have some really cool stuff here that if you use code WAM15, W-A-M 15, all one word, of course, you will get 15% off. And I urge people to check out Protovite, where it's 100 plus vitamins and minerals, support cellular health. You basically see on video within 5 minutes, your blood is cleansed, your cell structure is better off when you use this. And it's something that usually takes months to do. You could do in 5 minutes by taking Protovite. So I urge people to check that out. It's for immunity relief as well. And it has full body system support. So again, it doesn't have much to do with the video we're talking about today, but I find it pretty incredible. And I wanted to make sure that people know about it. So it's all in the links. And of course, find us on Rumble, BitChute, places like that. Hit the subscribe button. You can help support us by going to gogetfunding.com, Patreon, or Subscribestar. Anything helps, my friends. I mean, we've lost 90% of our money since January, more than that at this point. And, you guys are the only thing keeping us alive. So if you pledge $4.99 or more on Patreon or Subscribestar, you will get exclusive content. Same with on X at World Alt Media if you subscribe. And of course, we have a PayPal address, ancientwonderstelevision@gmail.com. We have a Bitcoin address that you can scan on the screen right here or check out in text form in the description. And of course, we have a Cointree link with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you can donate in if you please, including privacy coins. So check that out. Find our Teespring store. All of that helps support us. We truly appreciate it. And of course, find us on Telegram, Band.video, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon at World Alternative Media. We're on Hive, Steemit, and Vigilante.tv at Josh Sigurdson, and on the Bad Guys TikTok and Instagram, World Alternative Media, Twitter and Getter at World Alt Media, and all the major podcast platforms except for Spotify, where of course we're banned. Hit the like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already. Live freely, live by example. Don't fall for the tricks. Don't fall for the fear mongering. Just get prepared. That is what's most important going forward. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.